Okay, can everyone hear me? Okay. Well, good morning, folks. Looks like the crowd is starting to calm down, so that sounds like it's showtime. My name is Marty Whitfield, and I'm one of our assistant directors in the City of Phoenix Parks Department, so I'm thrilled to be here this morning. The National Forum for Black Public Administrators is such an amazing organization. I've been a member, I think, since 2002. Janice Pitts, who hired me, and I think I saw her name on the list today. My first day, she said, "You need to join NFPPA." And I said, "What in the world is that? I don't even know where my office is." So she encouraged me to join, and I think I was chair of the seminar for maybe 3 or 4 years. So it is a lot of work. So when you see the folks that put it together today, just make sure you prop them up. So they've got regular jobs, and then they put on this as well. So the title of today's session is Welcome to Crucial Conversation, When and How to Have Them. So when you move up the ladder in your organization, you run into folks that hopefully will have those crucial conversations with you like I have, and I'm sure our panelists today, which you will hear about here in a second. Many crucial conversations need to be had. Today, we're going to learn about when and how to have these conversations, tips on how to build rapport and how to engage colleagues. We have an hour together, which will include a 45-minute Q&A session, and then 15 minutes for questions from you folks. Now, at the end of the 45 minutes, don't just sit there. Please have some questions. I mean, you're away from work today, right? You're checking your emails and stuff, but let's engage with our panelists, all right? I am thrilled to moderate this session this morning with two dynamic public servants. Let's meet the panelists. I had to go over their bios last night just to read them. They are very impressive, so I hope I don't screw that up, especially the lady down here on the end.
I was gonna say, because you must got the wrong bio.
No. Okay. All right. So
somebody.
all right. To my far left, Marshall Franklin is the director of the City of Phoenix Human Services Department. In this role, she manages a $160 million budget and leads over 450 employees providing services in the areas of emergency and short-term financial assistance for individuals and families, senior programs, businesses and workforce development, Head Start programs, outreach, emergency shelter and supportive services for individuals and families experiencing homelessness. That's a large task for the city of Phoenix right now, let me tell you, and comprehensive services to victims of domestic violence and sexual assault. Marshall has almost 35 years of experience in public and private sector, which is hard because I know she's 29 years old, with a strong background in public-private partnerships, developing and influencing public policy, community development and engagement, economic development, legislative affairs, strategic planning, and human resources management. I didn't want to miss anything.
Okay.
She earned an MBA in finance degree from Grand Canyon University.
So we're right here.
All right. A BS in business administration degree from the University of Phoenix, and completed the executive development program in human resources consulting and strategic development at the University of Southern California. Homegirl's been busy, right? Marshall is a member of the International City Council Management Association, National Forum for Black Public Administrators, Charter 100 Arizona, and Alpha Kappa Alpha Sorority.
I won't get my ski-wee in here. I'll leave it alone.
Yeah,
I'll leave
all
it
right.
alone. I got some
Valerie, you okay? You okay?
There's some Greek in here, but it's a sister.
All right. Her volunteer activities include serving on the board of directors for the Fiesta Bowl and Black Chamber of Arizona. She's also immediate past chair. Please welcome Miss Marshall Franklin. All right.
First difficult conversation. Don't read mine after her. Let's just skip mine and they can pretend they don't know who I am.
John, I got to give you some love.
Right.
Okay, John Pombier is a veteran of both the courtroom and city government. John is in his 19th year working with the city of Mesa, which is longevity, right? And 12th as the assistant city manager. John began his career with Mesa as the city prosecutor, spending 7 years with that title before being named to his current position. While John was city prosecutor, the Mesa's prosecutor's office won 3 State of Arizona City Prosecutor of the Year awards. Prior to that, Mesa had only earned that award once in the city's history. In his role as Assistant City Manager, John is responsible for overseeing numerous city departments, including police, fire, and medical, human resources, fleet services, environmental management and sustainability, and the Department of Innovation and Technology. He serves as the liaison between the chiefs of police and fire and medical departments and the Mesa City Council, and has successfully negotiated every public safety labor contract over the past decade. Wow, that is impressive.
Until we stop doing them.
Right. After
Sorry,
earning,
Chief.
after,
Chief's in here in case you don't know.
okay, let's see. After earning his law degree with Arizona State University Sandra Day O'Connor's College of Law, John spent 4 years as the lead attorney for the city of Phoenix. I just learned that outside here in the hall in the domestic violence unit. He also served as Phoenix Assistant City Prosecutor from 1995 to 1997. He spent 2 years as the Deputy General Counsel for the state of Arizona's Governor's Office and was the Director of the Governor's Division of the Prevention of Family Violence. A native of Michigan, John earned his bachelor's degree in business administration from the University of Michigan Ross School of Business. Please help me welcome John Pombier. I wanted to read those bios just to let you know that there is a long list of jobs that both of these distinctive panelists have had. So let's dive right in. Let's start with John. What inspired you to work in public service, and what has continued to motivate you to continue your career in public service?
So probably what inspired me was, I had a father who was a teacher his whole career, and a mother who was a Girl Scout her whole career. So I remember growing up being 4, 5, 6, stuffing envelopes for United Way. And that's how we spent our weekends. And it's the way we were brought up from a service standpoint. But probably what motivated me the most was my time in Phoenix as an assistant city prosecutor. I got to prosecute domestic violence cases. And the reason I enjoyed prosecuting domestic violence cases is you were fighting for women predominantly who didn't believe they had a place. And I will tell you the thing that I think about on the long days is I lost a case one time. It will surprise no one from Mesa in this room that in the hall, I was the one throwing the fit, not the victim. And the victim wrote a letter after that, and she said it was the first time someone had fought for her. And I think about the people we fight for that don't have a voice, and that's what challenges me to serve better each and every day.
So my story is a little interesting. So I never thought I'd be in public service. I spent my first 15 years in the private sector, and I literally landed working for the city of Phoenix in a way I never would have thought. So 20 years later, April 15th of this year will be 20 years with the city of Phoenix. I thought I'd be here 2 years working for then Councilman Michael Johnson, those who knew Michael Johnson, and then 8 years with former Mayor Phil Gordon. And then I spent some time at the airport, and that's where I got to really know our wonderful moderator from this morning, Valerie, and a couple of years in PD and now in the Human Services Department. So it's always interesting to me when I get asked the question about public service. And so I'll answer it this way for you. Folks have a faith belief. I have a faith belief, and I haven't planned my career. So my 30-something years, I've never planned a single job. And so I would say that what keeps me in the public service field is recognizing that God wants me to be here for a reason and a season and for place and space. And so if I trust his path for me, and if I trust that he has my best interest in heart, where he has me is where I'm supposed to be. So I have an obligation to be there and serve. So that's why I'm here in public service. I'm here to serve. I have an obligation to serve. I have an obligation to be for my community in this role, what I need to be. And then John mentioned something that it's been interesting to be in different roles when you're talking public service. But I will say this particular role that I'm in now as a Human Services Director has been, I won't say most enriching because all of them are enriching, but you can really see a difference. You know, when you see a family come in where they're on the brink of utilities being cut off and they're 3 months, 4 months, 5 months behind rent, and you can give them money and you see the tears in their eyes of, I didn't know what I was going to do. Or you have a victim of domestic violence or sexual assault. And when they come in to our Family Advocacy Center and you see that they've been treated with dignity, when they have experienced one of the most horrendous types of violations that can happen, to see them recognize that they have dignity. And in the conversation, the conference session earlier about you hold the right space for them, to see that in people makes it all worthwhile. So it's those things that drive me. One, that I'm here for a season for a reason. So I have an obligation to bring my best and serve. But in this role, we really are touching people at their core, and that keeps me going day in and day out. So that's why I'm here. Who knows where God will have me a year from now. I need at least till July 2023. Everybody know I got to get the plug in. So when I can retire. So I need to at least stay here till July 2023. But anyways, that's my story about public service.
I have my way. She might be working in Mesa after that.
Too funny.
I am sitting next to somebody who could make it happen.
I use these as a recruiting events. If you don't work for Mesa, my question for you is why? All right, so let's talk.
Too funny, too funny. I think it was about 2 years ago, the COVID pandemic hit, and I didn't know how serious it was until the Duke basketball men's program canceled the NCAA. And Marshall knows this, but
Yes.
I take 2 days off usually, yesterday and today, to watch the NCAA, but Quaylen, who's in the back over there, gave me an opportunity to come moderate. She told me I had to do it, folks. So the next question is kind of stemmed around that. The last 2 years have been tough and impacted the workforce differently. Leading during a pandemic has been very difficult. Let's start with Marshall. What has helped you be successful during the last couple of years?
So what's helped me be successful? I'll be honest, I don't know if there's times when I've always been successful, just being very honest. But I will say, again, the work that we do out of the Human Services Department has kept us grounded, kept me grounded as it relates to COVID. And, you know, COVID first hit, some of us were working 17, 18 hours a day, literally 7 days a week, especially when you work in local government. For all of us that do, services still need to be delivered. People need those services more than ever in the midst of COVID. So what kept me going is to recognize that at the end of the day, I still knew I was going home to a roof over my head. I still knew my sons would be healthy and whole. I still knew my parents would be okay. You know, I knew I would be okay, but I also knew there were those who did not and were not going to be okay. And so each day I'd wake up and I'd say, okay, Lord, help me deal with what I'm dealing with, because COVID hit all of us as well, personally, in terms of deaths and getting COVID and what have you. But really saying, I've got to really now figure out how I'm bringing the best that I can to provide support for those who need our services, but also for those 450 employees that work in the Human Services Department. So you're giving, you're giving, you're giving, you're giving, but those people who are giving also need. And so how do you balance their need? And then how do I give space for my own self to recognize that I need as well in the midst of COVID? And so when I say successful, not successful at times, there were times when I came to work and I was not my best because I was trying to process. And there are probably some things or decisions that I made, maybe because I was just tired and dealing with my own stuff, that I would have done differently, quite honestly. But leading through COVID and leading folks through COVID was allowing everyone to have space to sit in how COVID was impacting you personally and how it was impacting you professionally. And then saying, how do we work collectively, both as individuals and as a team, to move forward as we need to move forward. And then finally reminding everyone at the end of the day that we're here to serve. And so make sure you take care of self and do what you need to do for self. But when we come to work, those that we're serving are already in need. They're in even greater need now. We owe it to them to figure out how we're bringing our best every day to serve them. So that's how we navigated through it. When still navigating through it, having very honest conversations, giving everybody space to feel what it feels like to be working and living in this environment called COVID, as well as acknowledging that it is impacting us personally and professionally, and it's okay, but also remembering that we still have jobs to do. We're still getting paychecks, so we still have to show up each day and deliver. So that's really how I did my best to try and lead our department through COVID and to lead staff through COVID. I'll leave it at that. It's been tough, but we've made it through.
John, same question for you.
I honestly think the beginning was easier The beginning of COVID was easier. Why? Because I would say 75% of the employees or 80% of the employees that work for me never got to go home. Okay. They worked day in and day out. They had to show up day in and day out. You know, whether you work from home or not was never a question for them. Police, fire, utilities, garbage truck drivers, everybody, they had to show up day in and day out, and focusing on that and making sure we were providing the service. That was the easy part of COVID, right? That was the part that we are all geared to do. The type A personality clicks in, you're making sure things happen, you're making sure things get done, and you're making sure your employees have what they need to get the job done. I think the last year has been much harder because, as you said, we're hitting a part where our employees, their resiliency is being tested. Their bucket is full, right? They're struggling with, hey, I've been through all of this and now this still. And I think as a leader, if you want to lead within your organization and have those tough conversations, you got to show your vulnerability. You got to acknowledge to people that there are days when you walk in and you don't have your best. And if you can't acknowledge that and you try to fake it, they'll know. And if you show it and you build the relationship so you feel comfortable showing it, your willingness as a leader in your organization to show that allows them the capacity to show it and to ask for help. And folks, there isn't anybody who went through this doesn't need to ask for help. Think about your own life. Think about what you've seen, what you've gone through, what your organization has gone through. Everybody you know at one point or another during this has needed help. And if you're a true leader within an organization, you can have those tough conversations. You're giving them a forum so they can ask for help.
All right, thank you. John, let's start with you on this one. Let's talk a little bit about mentorship. I'm certain each one of you has had mentors as you worked your way up the government ladder. Tell us about one or two mentors that you had and what they taught you.
Wow. I'd say patience, but everybody from Mesa would laugh. Yeah. You know, I'll go back to, ironically enough, Phoenix. The training attorney in the city of Phoenix prosecutor's office taught me a lot about understanding your strengths and weaknesses and kind of maximizing those, and taught me the importance of realizing that we don't do this alone and we don't do it in a vacuum. And you can't, you know, somebody talked earlier about looking behind and pulling people back. Well, you can't even get up that ladder without helping other people up. All right. You can't get anywhere if it's all about you. And you've got to think while you're acting. So I still, if you walk into my office to this day, I still have a little toy figurine. It's a Tasmanian devil. All right. And it's scratching its head. And most people who see that probably think that's because he's got more energy than anybody I know. And he's always running around spinning and he never sits still. But her point in giving it to me was the scratching of his head. And she handed it to me. She said, think before you act. Okay? Think before you act. And for most of the people I've mentored through the years, I will tell them almost everything you see is something I've thought about before I've acted. All right. So think before you act and understand whether you're a mentor or a mentee, that relationship is good for both sides of that, because you can learn from both sides.
So one mentor, having a mentor is great. So I remember my first mentor was 24 years old. Marty Vargas is her name. I still stay connected with Marty. And so hopefully you can appreciate in terms of the value of a mentor is that I was at work, corporate America, and I was being my authentic self. Big earrings, you know, I'm rocking the hair. You know, I'm doing all of this. And,
Me
you know,
too.
I think, oh, yeah, I know. You have big hair to rock. So doing all the, you know, that you do when you're in your 20s. And Marty saw me, and Marty saw something in me that I hadn't seen in myself yet. And she pulled me aside and she said, Shell, and similar to what you said, she taught me two things. One, about you need to stop and think about implications of actions. And she was saying that in the context of be your authentic self, rock your earrings and, you know, be all that you know you want to be, sister girl, you know, I'm doing my thing. But recognize that you have to be thoughtful about how you show up, and you have to be thoughtful about how you want people to receive you and perceive you. So that was the first thing. And so that was stopping and thinking. And I learned to apply that to so many things, to your point about, that's one thing Marty taught me was don't make presumptions. Marty mentored me early on to do something that I drill in now, is to tell my team, you need to put your name on it and own it, and you need to date everything, and you need to triple check your work. So those things seem to be tiny, but they make all the difference in the world, because we all know the minute we send something to our city manager and it's got a typo or something's not added right, it's a problem. Or there's no ownership on it, so you don't know who created the document, when it was created. And so those are the two things that stood out for me in terms of mentorship, and Marty in particular, and the value that she saw in mentorship, and the value in saying, Shell, I know this is tough, since we're going to talk about courageous, difficult conversations, but I need to share these things with you. And so now 30 something years later, I'm still talking about Marty Vargas and what Marty poured into me, and attributing a lot of what Marty poured into me from a professional mentorship has served me well to this day. And I still, in the back of my mind, remember, what does Marty say? And for those who report to me, one or two of them are in the room. Marty always had a red pen. Marshall always has red pen, because Marshall's always red penning everything. Quaylen's shaking her head because we operate with, Quaylen's not one of them. So let me put that out there real quick. Quaylen and her team, they handle the business, but other times really having to delve into that. So mentorship is important. Mentorship is valuable. And then it's important for us to accept being mentored. And that's sometimes challenging and hard, but when people want to invest in you, you have to allow them to invest in you, because they're taking time of themselves and sometimes having those difficult, courageous conversations to say, I want to pour into you because I want you to be the best that you can be.
The name like Marty sounds like greatness, doesn't it? Okay.
It does. It's my oldest son's name. That's why he knows. It's
All
Marty.
right. Thank you, Marshall. Let's start with you on this one. Work relationships are so important. How do you effectively build work relationships?
So first of all, I think it's important to be as transparent as you can be. I think it's important to meet people where they're at. I think it's important to recognize that everyone in the organization adds value. So from the CEO or the city manager down to the individual who comes in twice a day, in our case at the city of Phoenix, and cleans the toilets. So it's about figuring out how you create connection with people. I don't know about you all, but if I don't have a connection with someone, it's hard to create relationship. It's hard to have dialogue. Connections don't have to be deep. They can be simple connections as, I noticed your shoes today. I really like those shoes. And it generates a conversation so that when you see each other again the next time, there's a connection about the shoes, and you create a relationship. There are boundaries in relationships in the professional environment. So you do want to be very careful about that. My daddy would always tell me, and he cut his teeth in corporate America when there weren't a lot of people that looked like him, never get personal. So that's a little challenging when you talk about relationships and building them. So you have to figure out the space where you can share some personal, but still keep your boundaries, where you can still share a part of you, but still maintain boundaries. And so I have found over my years with the city in particular, what has helped me well in the different roles has been developing those relationships. And they've been organic most of the time. Some of them have been relationships that are official relationships, if you will, because you have to engage with people in official capacities. But I also think it's important in those relationships to develop the informal connections, because you may not always be in the professional relationship or engagement with them in terms of a work structure or a task or a reporting relationship, but you still need to maintain the relationship, because you don't know when you may need them for something, or they may be coming to you or pivoting to when you have to start having some crucial conversations. So I do my best to try and be transparent with folks. I do my best to try and create a connection. I'm a hugger, which can get you in trouble. So I try to remind people, especially in COVID too. So it's helped me some that you couldn't really hug in the COVID environment, but I believe in connection with people. I believe in a physical, appropriate connection with people. And I believe in finding space between each other where you can find something that connects you to, and then nurturing your relationship and connection from there.
One of the best I know that does it. John.
You all met my boss earlier. He frowns on me hugging anyone, so we'll start with that. All right, got that off my chest. All right. Folks, that was a phenomenal answer. I'm gonna focus on one aspect of it I think that's really important. in any relationship you build, you get into that weird area where you got a time where you got to do your job. Okay. And that's the hard part. So you've got to be very true to yourself and making sure those people, as you develop those relationships, know when push comes to shove, I'm going to do my job, and it's not personal. All right. So even when you develop a friendship, you develop a closeness, they all know you're going to follow through on what you need to do, because that can be the strongest test to any relationship. It's all good when everything's going well and you're promoting up and you're doing things. But then when push comes to shove and you got to deliver bad news in a crucial conversation, can you do it? And do you have the guts to do it eye to eye, or are you going to do it through a phone call, an email, or a text? I think we'll talk at some point. Those are all bad ideas. Okay. But I think in developing those relationships, people got to know that you're going to follow through on those. And then as you move up within an organization, you end up eating lunch alone a lot more often. Okay. Because it's very difficult to do both sides of that, the relationship and the job. So I think those are important things to go along with everything else, because if you don't develop the relationships, you won't be successful. But it's balancing the two that I think is very critical.
John, that's such a good point about eating lunch alone. I'd never thought about that until you just said it. I eat lunch in my office alone every day, for a couple of reasons. My wife doesn't allow me to go out and eat, and that's why we have a little bit of money.
Brother, that's a different class.
Okay. But no, very good point. All right, question number 5. Let's start with John. It's a 2-part question. Tell us about a professional, crucial conversation someone had with you and why the conversation was so important.
So I keep going back to a lot of the things I learned as a young prosecutor, but if you're a type A personality and you're a young prosecutor, when I would go into a courtroom, I didn't just want to win. Okay. I didn't want to just do justice, but I wanted to rip the other attorney's leg off and beat him over the head with it. And I wanted everybody in the room to know I was the best. And an attorney who now, ironically, is a judge in the city of Mesa, sat down with me one day and said, you can't always win that way and be successful. At some point, you've got to get to a situation where both parties feel like they won, where both parties feel like they had that conversation, they had that chance. And so I remember him sitting down and saying, if it's always going to be that you didn't just beat him, you crushed him, you're not going to be successful in your career. You've got to find ways to make it a win-win situation. I think what that led me to is I tell now when I mentor people, I tell them, if you can get what you need out of a meeting or out of a relationship, and the other person thinks they won and they don't even think you did, you've won. All right. You've now become that person that gets things done and other people think it was for them and you're happy. And so that one conversation led me to really rethink, winning can be fun, but when the other side thinks they won, you're almost always better off.
So I'll pivot back again to Marty. So I was in human resources at that time, and I had an employee who came to me and said these things were happening. And so I, in my infinite wisdom, at 27 years old, decided I was going to go confront the executive vice president of the organization. You see where this one's going.
Yeah.
See, I know I'm right. I'm human resources. We know what's going on. We know the right answers. This executive vice president was wrong and her team were wrong. And so I roll up in the executive vice president's office. Her name is Ileana. It's funny, I still remember her name. And so, I'm telling her what they didn't do and what she needs to. Now I'm a human resources officer, probably 15 grades beneath an executive vice president of the organization. But I'm going to take myself in there and school the executive vice president on what she and her team didn't do right from an HR perspective. So I read my little thing, say my thing, tell her what's going on. I back my stuff, grab my little bag, and I sashay on out the office. I think I've handled my business. And he's sitting back, he's like, yeah, I told them what they did wrong. And, I handled the business. All of a sudden, my beloved Marty came in. That's who I was reporting to. She was executive vice president HR. She said, Shell, I need to talk with you. It's like, okay, I thought she was going to pat me on the back. I handle my business, have my chest all sticking out, and I roll in with my little pad of paper to explain to her what I, read the riot act to the executive vice president. And she said, Shell, I need to share something with you. Did you know X, Y, and Z? No, I didn't, about this situation. No, I didn't. Well, did you know this and this and this about the situation? No, I didn't. Did you know this and this and this about the situation? Well, no, I didn't. So Shell, the reason why the executive vice president did what she did was because of these 15 things. Did you stop to get the other side of the story? No. So now it's like, oh my goodness, I've chewed out the executive vice president. I didn't get all my facts. Do I now have a job? You know, kind of like Jeff said earlier, you're like, uh-oh.
Yeah.
Do I now have a job? But what was beautiful for that, for me, one was that Marty, because we had developed a relationship, even as my boss, but to your point, she knew this was a time when I had to be your boss. And so I'm gonna have to deliver this tough message to you. But she walked me through it. I had to eat a lot of humble pie. The next day I had to go back and I apologized to the executive vice president for how I presented myself and how I had not done my due diligence, and bless God for her graciousness, Ileana, in terms of some of it, I think saying, okay, she's 20-something years old, I'm gonna give her a little grace and mercy, remembering she probably had a similar situation, but that helped me to remember that when I'm approaching folks, and it's helped me now, even when I have to have crucial and critical conversations, do your best to try and understand all of the facts. Do your best to try and gather as much information. And even sometimes when you know what you know and you know it's right, it's okay to approach a conversation similar to what you said about when someone can feel like they've won, to still even approach it from, I may know the facts, but I don't have to start or engage the conversation from a position of power in terms of knowing the facts. I still can get to an end game, knowing that I know what I know, but coming at it from a way that says, I'm going to do it in a way that maintains your dignity, my dignity. It may be a tough conversation and I may know the facts. I may know that I'm right, if you will, but I still have to approach it in a way that gives me space in case there's that little 1% that I didn't know about that comes up as a part of the conversation, as well as the bigger piece about the person who I'm talking with needing to receive what it is I'm having to share. So I'm truly blessed that I had that lesson early on, and it was with a boss who was courageous enough to have the conversation with me and cared enough to have it. And then the person who I needed to go and apologize to was gracious enough to accept my apology. And that sticks with me to this very day. When I have conversations with folks, I remember that so vividly that I don't want to ever have to go back and apologize to someone because my arrogance caused me to say, I thought I knew, when I really didn't know. If I have to go back and apologize, which I've had to do and don't mind doing, it may be because it was something unintentional. It wasn't because I came in from a position of thinking I had the power and I knew it all. And so I'm telling you and delivering a message to you that you absolutely need to receive. I don't want to ever be in that space again. So that's how I try to, that conversation with that mentor sticks to me to this day.
Okay.
Yeah.
Great. Let's flip the switch just a little bit on that, Marshall. Let's look at the previous question in a different way. Tell us about a professional, crucial conversation you had with a subordinate or a colleague and why the conversation was so important.
So I'll share this. Unfortunately, I don't see anybody in the room who would have been with the city or working in that particular area, but we had working for elected officials, very unique situation and dynamic. It's different than any other environment. Val knows that in terms of working for an elected official. And we had a particular member on the team who, in their effort to try and be supportive of that elected official, probably was crossing some lines unintentionally in terms of going to the elected official's house to help them with this and help them with that. Nothing inappropriate. So hear me clearly, nothing inappropriate, but there was the perception, you know, of a lot of different things. And so this individual, while they reported up through me as the chief of staff, when you work for an elected official, everybody has their unique relationships with the elected official. And so I had to have a very tough conversation with this individual about perception. And it was tough because I knew the individual was going to pivot to, well, I'm not having a relationship with X elected official, and immediately would get defensive. And so I had developed a relationship with this individual through trust. There were some personal things that she had shared with me in the course of just supporting her as she would come to work each day relative to her personal life, but having to be able to separate that piece of it, to be able to separate some of the feelings I knew that she would have that I would have to eventually manage, but have the tough conversation to say, I'm going to encourage you not to do these things going forward. I need you to read between the lines. I'm encouraging you not to do these going forward. I'm encouraging you not to do these. Now, this is Chief of Staff talking to staff member. I'm encouraging you not to do this anymore. But if this continues to happen, then we're going to have a different conversation, because at the end of the day, our responsibility is to protect this elected official. And any behaviors and actions that we have that can cast dispersion on that elected official intentionally or unintentionally are unacceptable. Like Jeff said earlier, we're there to protect our boss. We were there to protect that elected official. And so it was a tough conversation, because it was immediately pivoting to, well, you think I'm having a relationship, but that's not what I said. Here's what I said. And here's where I need you to be more thoughtful. And so the blessing in that, if you will, is the individual recognize it. There were a couple of times when you had to kind of pull the coattail a little bit to say, you're probably moving into that lane you shouldn't be in anymore. But it was tough to have, because I knew the person's heart was in the right place, genuinely in the right place. So how do you not crush someone's spirit because they care, but also having to redirect to protect them from themselves, as well as protect your elected officials. So it was tough, but it was necessary.
And I'll take it a little bit different realm in that it's one thing to have a crucial conversation when you're doing with someone who works for you or someone who is at a lower level than you within the organization. When you have to move up within the organization to have a difficult conversation, those can be very, very difficult, because you're walking into a room where you don't have the power. You're walking in a situation where you may be there to protect someone who doesn't want to be protected, or at least bring into their attention, hey, this is the problem we're walking into. And I think you've got to have the courage to look at them and tell them why you're there. Like I said before, most crucial conversations, they got to be face to face. You got to look the other person in the eye, and you got to tell them why you're there. And if your ultimate job is loyalty and, doing the right thing and, protecting your boss, as we do so much in this realm, you got to be willing to sometimes talk to your boss or an elected official and say, understand how this looks, understand what you're doing. And let me tell you why I'm standing here and why I'm sitting here. Because having that with someone subordinate to you in the organization is a little bit different than talking to the boss or talking to one of the boss's boss. And I'll go back to what you were talking about. A lot of that comes into the trust in the relationship. And if you want to be successful in crucial conversations, you've got to set that trust up day one. I meet with every new council member and I tell them exactly the same thing. I want the ability to walk in your office and tell you exactly what I think, exactly how I think it. And I want you to feel just as comfortable walking in my office, tell you exactly what you need and exactly what you think. At some point, you're going to make a decision. It becomes my job to make that happen. But I want you to understand you've gotten the very best from me. And I'm going to say those same things to you, whether you like it or not. And some of the most difficult ones I ever had were, we still have photo safety in Mesa. All right. We probably still have photo safety in Mesa because of me. All right. I've had these conversations over the years, and I've told council members who were very much opposed to them why it's such an important thing for the city. All right. But that's a crucial conversation, has many different levels depending on who you're talking to and when. And if you handle them the same way throughout the organization, people will know. Okay? They will know who you are. They will know how you handle yourself. And if the organization has trust in you, that conversation will go much better than it will be if you say one thing to one person and one thing to another.
I want to leave some time for questions from the audience, but there's one more question I want to ask, and I'll start with John. Work-life balance is very important, but also a challenge when you are in management. How do you achieve work-life balance? Or do you? Travis? Chief?
Don't. This will be a crucial conversation, Travis. This is right in front of everybody. I think one of the biggest challenges is 15, 20 years ago, we didn't have this cell phone. All right. All right. And I joke all the time when I do trainings, when I go to bed at night, I literally put this 6 inches away because I don't want to wake everybody else up in the house. So I put it on vibrate, but it's close enough in my head that when the call comes, it vibrates and I wake up. So and nobody calls. Great, go back to sleep. All right. Nobody calls then. So it's a different type of work-life balance. And I think you got to have I guess from my perspective, you got to have the things that is truly where you check in with yourself and you do it purely for yourself. So anybody who works for me, Travis is here, Mary is here, they know from about 3:30 to 4 in the morning to 6, I'm working out. Right. And don't call me unless you have to during that time. So if my phone rings during that time, I know all heck is breaking loose. All right. And they know that's my time. All right. Because after that, the other 22 hours of the day, this goes off. And I used to joke before COVID that I thought I could do my job anywhere in the world as long as my phone worked. All right. COVID kind of showed in some ways, at least some certain aspects of your job, not the leadership aspect and not the supervision aspect, but in some ways, this thing goes off no matter where you're at.
Yeah.
All right. And so I think you got to learn within your life to find the one thing that is yours. And the other piece of advice I'll give you is this. There are certain times in your life where you got to put it away. You just got to say, I'm going to be in the moment and I'm done with you. All right. Because in the end, I know whether I pick it up in an hour or 2 hours, I can still help with the problem. But if I'm not in the moment, then what value am I to the moment? And so I would encourage you, find that stuff for you and then pick your times where you're going to be in the moment and put the thing away. We have a very love-hate relationship, man. I left my last one on top of my car. That's why I got this one. We breaking up.
Okay, thank you.
So I'll say, I don't think there's ever a work-life balance, honestly. To what John said, you have to find space for it. So some days I'll drive and work and be at work 10, 12 hours. Other days, staff will know, 3 o'clock, I'm gone. I'm gone. And do my best to the extent you can, that when you leave to not look at the phone. Some of the jobs we all have, sometimes you don't get the ability to not look at it, but you do get the ability to what John said, to say, no, for these next 2.5, 3 hours, I'm not going to look at it, because if I died tomorrow, love the city of Phoenix, they'd send some flowers to my family, they'd pay out my life insurance policies, and then they'd have what on Monday, my job open to replace me. So also remembering that, you know what, while yes, you bring value to what you do, and while you hold a position and there's expectation, you also have to remember there are the times when you're just going to have to disengage. So do I think there's a work-life balance? Probably not, because sometimes work will be more than personal, but sometimes personal will be more than work. And you've just got to say, this is my moment, to your point, 3, 4 in the morning, don't bother me, because that's my space for me, or whatever adds value for you. So I would just say, find the times to have your space, and then be true to finding your space. And that becomes especially difficult if you are a parent. And for me, I was a single parent for many, many years. So you have children and you're saying, how do I find space for myself? I'm also working a lot, but I also got to be mommy or be daddy or be whatever it is you have to be if you have children, mommy and daddy sometimes. How do I do that? Still be true to being a mom and a dad, or a mom or dad, or whatever space you hold, as well as be true to my job, but also be true to myself. So work-life balance to me also means being true to yourself and saying sometimes, I just need a moment where I'm just going to go disengage, even in the midst of whatever's going on, or saying to yourself, it's okay to go to Total Wine and More. Go to the rum section.
I got a flat.
Come on, let's give it up. Find a little something.
Tight of the water, man.
Chill yourself back and have your moment, or say, you know what? I know I don't have this $1,500 or $500 or $50 or $5, but I need to just go do for me right in this moment. And I'm going to go do. I mean, I had a $5, but you know what? It'll make a difference for me in the long run. So I would just say that I don't know if there's necessarily work-life balance. I think it's a matter of saying, what are the spaces I need to carve out to keep myself sane, knowing that sometimes work will be more out of balance than personal life. And sometimes personal life, quite honestly, can be a little bit more than work, depending upon what you have going on. So that's what I'd answer. And Total Wine and More. again.
Total Wine.
Total Wine and
For the record, Mason works 410, so I was hoping for a Bloody Mary bar this morning. Once again, Travis.
Yeah.
I did. It's empty.
Oh, wow.
Oh, goodness.
Great answers by the panelists. From a single parent home myself, Marshall, kudos to you. Mommy is the hardest job in the history of job, followed closely by quarterback of the Dallas Cowboys. But,
Oh, my God. Oh,
That's
Cowboy.
Disappointment. sorry. I'm done.
Before we open it up for questions, let's give our panelists a round of applause. That was tremendous. All right. Yeah.
I can't believe we don't know each other. We sound a lot alike.
So I think we have about 7 minutes. So does anyone have any questions? Travis.
Uh-oh.
That's not all. So, there's this feeling, you know, with regard to crucial conversations that it's easy.
Well, I think first of all, I mean, you all know yourselves better than anybody sitting in this room, right? Do you have them with yourself? Do you have those crucial conversations with yourself? Because if you do, you're halfway down the path. I'll tell you, Travis, as much as probably some people don't think, they're never fun. You never look forward to them. All right. If you're willing to do them, you're willing to do them face to face. Do they get easier? They probably get easier from the sense of I know my job and I'm willing to do my job. All right. But I shudder to think that they're ever fun for somebody or they're ever easy in terms of I don't mind doing them. You do it because it's your job. And within any organization, unless you're the all-out supreme ruler, all right, which I don't know that anybody is, because even my boss works for a council, you're going to have times when you're having conversations you might not even want to have. And let me tell you the one thing about a crucial conversation. If you're doing what you're supposed to do in your job, whoever you're having that conversation with should think it's coming from you. Okay. It shouldn't be, well, I have to. It shouldn't be, in my case, Chris says, all right, own it. Put your name on it, look them in the eye and show them the respect to do it that way. So Travis, to your point, no, I don't ever find them fun. All right. I don't ever, well, maybe one time I found it fun. Maybe one time, but I will tell you, I think if you're really true and honest to yourself about it, you get better at them, but they're never fun.
Yes, I agree. So I just add on to what John said. I remember when I was working in HR, we used to talk as a team that if you ever got comfortable at having to have a tough conversation with someone, I didn't want you working in HR. I didn't want you on the team because you still have to be empathetic about people, to your point. Look them in the eye. Those are tough conversations, but people, you still need to maintain an individual's dignity in having those tough conversations. So if you ever got to the point where you were cool with having to terminate somebody or have a tough conversation, I didn't want you because you knew you were impacting somebody's life. And then the final thing I'll say, just to add to what John said, is that I had to have a challenging conversation 2 weeks ago. I was up at 2 a.m. It was the right thing. I knew I had to deliver it. I knew what I had to say and how I needed to say it, but I didn't go back to bed that entire morning. I didn't eat breakfast because my stomach was churning, not because I was fearful of what I had to do, but because I knew I had to do it and I knew it was going to have an impact on someone. And it just was not, it just was a moment. And so, you know, it's recognizing that you should never, in my opinion, as John said, I think we all would agree, ever get comfortable with having to have crucial conversations. You have to get comfortable with they're necessary, but you should never get comfortable or not have some type of emotion tied to having a crucial conversation, because you're talking about people and you're talking about people's feelings and you're talking about their dignity, and you never know what they're dealing with. So that as you're having to deal or deliver the crucial conversation, you don't know what else they have going on. So you're trying to remember, I got to do this in a way that maintains dignity, but still deliver it. And that's the piece where for me, sometimes my stomach churns because you just want to do it right, because you know the importance of doing it right. You don't want to fail.
And I will flip around for everybody in this room one aspect of that. As much as we agonize over those crucial conversations, we will remember how you respond to the crucial conversation. Okay.
Sure will.
Every time you have a crucial conversation on the other side where someone is talking to you, your receptiveness, you're willing to hear that message, and how you respond professionally will always be remembered.
Sure
All right. And if you handle it professionally, no matter what's going on inside you, you handle it professionally, they will always remember that. You handle it unprofessionally, they will always remember that. And I will tell you from my entire career, I remember mostly the people who handled them poorly.
I agree.
Because you see how they respond to stress, and you see that, and you know And so just keep, both sides of that are hard because we put a lot of thought into it and a lot of agony goes into it to get it right. And if we feel like we're delivering it in the right way, the response becomes very important.
I think we might have time for one more question. Anybody else have anything out there? Yes, ma'am.
Kind of on that same regard, have you ever had a difficult conversation where maybe years later someone came back? So thank you. for that?
Good question.
Oh, I never.
If you want to be a really good leader within an organization, like one of the things we recently interviewed for my assistant, and I got to be careful with this because the person who won that interview process is in the room. All right. But we interviewed with a thing and I went personally to talk to all the people who didn't get the job. Okay. And I will tell you over the course of my career from being a prosecutor and all the way through, when you do that face to face and you show them respect and you have that conversation, many people have later come back and said, hey, that's one of the best, rejections I ever got. And I learned from it and I took from it. So I've gotten some positive comments in that respect, but it's when you take that extra step to actually do it in the right way. Nobody wants to hear bad news in a letter, an email, or in a phone call.
That's true.
At all points in times, if you avoid that and you have the courage to sit in front of them, the response will be better than it would have been in none of those modes.
So I just did what he said.
Okay, thank you, folks. Appreciate it.
To do this again?
Yeah, man. We make a good team.
We
man.
do. And then we got Marty.
Oh,
in
y'all
on the
make it
side.
easy.
Look, and look at this.
Well, the funny thing is I almost told him you can come back to the next one because we won't say the same thing. I never say the same things because I don't plan it.
And I just realized, but you have another one this
We have another one. We gotta do it.
Thank you, brother.
Yeah, you bet, man.
You're a Cowboys fan?
I am.
You're killing it.
I know,
I grew up
huh?
here.
We
Killing
still
it.
love them though, right? We
Ah.
Still love them, still love them,
But
still love them.
I'm 50. There was no team here when I was growing up.
So
Great job.
How you
Fire
doing?
chief, right?
Hey,